Good morning and welcome to Up North News Radio for this Wednesday morning, July 17th. I'm Pat Kreitlow in Chippewa Falls. Nice to have you along. The program begins at 6:01 here on the Civic Media. Did I say 6:01? 6:06. 6:06 our program begins here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Here's what's coming up. We will have Melissa Baldoff here with our weekly climate check. We'll do a little climate check of the convention and see to what degree Republicans have or have not made some changes in the way they look at a changing climate and embracing a new, cleaner, greener economy. In our second hour, we'll have Joe Trippi from the Lincoln Project with us, a longtime political strategist, talking about whether the messages at the Republican convention are going to land with moderate voters across the country. And then we have a special guest in our homeroom segment. Jennifer Berkshire is the author of The War on Education. And then we'll talk to Todd Allbaugh, who's doing his show live from inside the convention site there in downtown Milwaukee. Brittany Merlot has the forecast and much more coming up along the way. Again, getting started at 6:06 on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you soon.
across Wisconsin from Civic Media. This is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Wednesday morning, July 17th, 2024. It's another beautiful day to have you here up north. Live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, through the Civic Media app, watching us on Facebook or YouTube, or listening later on by podcast. We're glad to have you along here at midweek, where I've got a question for you. Remember Nikki Haley? I know the natural follow-up is, which Nikki Haley are we talking about? The Nikki Haley that existed ever so briefly from something like, I don't know, February to April, reminding us, or at least trying to remind fellow Republicans of everything that Donald Trump really is and stands for. Whatever happened to her? She seemed to be going places, or at least to have a path toward that. And then you saw the speech that she made and the speech that Ron DeSantis made at the convention, and how Donald Trump made sure to be there, to sit there like in the Coliseum, and to watch his vanquished foes be paraded in front of him and pledge their loyalty to him. And that's our Day 2 summary of the Republican National Convention. If you'd like to talk about it at all, our number is 855-75-CIVIC, 855-752-4842. You can call the number or text it. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can leave a comment in the comment section. We'll see it, maybe put it up on screen, and maybe respond to it. You can also send us an email, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. Let's see, we're also going to have our climate check. So we'll do a little convention climate check coming up with Melissa Baldoff today, because there's been some talk, and we've gone over it here in our climate check segments, that there are an increasing number of Republicans and conservatives who understand the gravity of the climate situation and or understand the economic potential of embracing newer, cleaner, American-produced energies. Is that kind of talk gaining traction at the convention overall? We'll talk to Melissa about that to see if the Republican record matches the new moderate rhetoric. Then in our second hour, longtime political strategist Joe Trippi, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, will give us his perspective on whether the messages at the Republican convention are landing with moderate voters. And then our homeroom segment features Jennifer Berkshire, author of The War on Education. And Todd Allbaugh will talk about the experience of doing his radio show from inside the convention site. Meteorologist Brittany Merlot will have our forecast as well. That's an hour from now. Temperatures right now across Wisconsin include 59 here in Chippewa Falls, 54 in Hayward. It's 51 in Park Falls, Wausau 64, Green Bay 63. La Crosse is at 61 degrees, Wisconsin Rapids 59, Oshkosh a very comfortable 65. Madison 63, and in the greater Milwaukee Metroplex, it is 63 degrees in downtown Waukesha, where we find one Greg Bach joining us this morning. And as I was talking about the rhetoric, Greg, I need to find just the right email, because Christina Laurie, she puts the newsletter together. She gets the responses as well, and sent me this one. Let's see, from Richard. I don't need to share your last name on the radio, Richard. Simply writes by email, "Go to hell, Pat Kreitlow." Okay, well, thank you.
Well.
Good morning. Good morning, Richard. may we call you Richard? On that happy note, Mr. Greg Bach, who nobody ever tells to go to hell, how are you this morning?
Yeah, what about me?
Yeah.
I mean,
what's the guy got to do to be told to go to hell at 6 o'clock in the morning?
I think climate change is real. I think that it's a problem. I think it's man-made. Come on, Richard, hit me with your best shot. I'm doing well. It's nice and sunshiny here in Waukesha. The sun's coming up. It's no fog. It doesn't even look like clouds in the sky. And it's nice and cool too. It's like you said, it's 62 degrees. It's lovely.
It is. It's just a good summer day, and nice to have the windows open again. We get the summer cycles where you get all kinds of heat, and then some days you get just these pleasant mornings, and it just makes it so wonderful to be here in Wisconsin. I regret to inform you, however, that Derek Van Orden is at it again.
Oh,
I'm not
great.
sure. He's been involved in another kerfuffle.
Which children did he yell at this time?
Yeah, well, it's something like that exactly. Derek Van Orden said that he was standing in line to enter the Republican National Convention yesterday. And he says, this was on Twitter, his statement is, I was assaulted by what appeared to be a member of the pro-Hamas group Code Pink. It's not really a link there, but that's okay. A nearby police officer witnessed the assault, and I understand they have been arrested. This appears to be an incident of political violence, and I will never tolerate this. Regardless of the severity of the violence, political violence is political violence. Republicans have been intimidated and targeted for years, including the attempted assassination of President Trump, and we will no longer stand by and allow lawlessness. There's no place for political violence in this country, and I have repeatedly called for people who choose this path to be prosecuted to the greatest extent of the law. Nothing will change until these people are held accountable. Signed, Derek Van Orden, on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021. This sounds like a savage attack, Greg. I mean, I don't know who this person from Code Pink was, but must have been like, I don't know, maybe a former wrestler. They must have just pummeled him.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the statement from Code Pink. In a troubling incident at the Republican National Convention, Code Pink's Palestinian campaign organizer, and they list her name here, and there's a picture of her, and she is, shall we say, diminutive. She is not a former professional wrestler, near as I can tell, was unjustly detained by police on accusation of assaulting a member of Congress. While peacefully waiting in line to enter the event, she was intentionally bumped into by a bald white member of Congress who tried to shove past her. Despite not reacting to this, she was falsely accused of alleged assault by a police officer from Texas on the scene. No charges have been filed as we write this statement. Notably, 2 other Code Pink staff members ahead of her in line passed through without any issues, raising concerns of racial profiling. It is a microcosm of the misogyny at the RNC that the more gentle, nonviolent woman, the only Palestinian in line with our group, is assaulted, and that even when she did not respond, she was the one who was arrested. One witness who did see this described it as basically a hip check. And it's just not clear if Derek Van Orden was trying to work his way past her and hip checked her, or if she saw this guy trying to come past and she kind of took a step into his way. Either way, if that's all it was a bump and a police officer on scene says, you're the one that initiated the bump, you're in trouble. That's all fine. It's just that for Derek Van Orden's statement to call it an incident of political violence and links it to the assassination, and Republicans have been intimidated and targeted over a hip check. Derek Van Orden, get over yourself, please. That's all we can ask for, because this level of drama in your statement does not help you.
No. And let's also be very clear. What happened on Saturday was awful. No one disagrees with that.
Yep.
I think it's been pretty much standard that everyone says that true political violence is unacceptable and not the way to make change. But for him to use that situation and to use such victimist rhetoric, victimist is not a word, I just made it up, but to make himself such a victim by using that rhetoric over what seemed to be bumping into someone, well, I mean, it's really just on brand for Derek Van Orden. He's such a sad boy baby. He just cannot hit. And the thing is, all right, man, now get back to work. Can you? Every time I think of him, all I think, are you helping the farmers yet? Are you helping the farmers yet?
He has taken farm tours.
But you're tweeting.
He's taken farm tours, and local TV stations love to talk about his farm tours. And a couple of weeks back, he honored a veteran for their 107th birthday. And I went back and looked through these local TV stations, and I don't see any of the coverage of the things that he says on social media, the insults, the trying to cut off Wisconsin farmers from entire global markets. No, I don't see any of that. So no, he has not been helping the farmers. Instead, he's been just continuing the white guy grievance gravy train. The woman who was detained, the video that I saw, which was after the incident, You had a couple of other Republicans dressed in their suits, waiting in line, yelling, "Go back to Gaza." We don't know that she's from Gaza. We don't know where she's from.
No.
So, but you can clearly hear them, and the camera pans over and shows them, "Go back to Gaza." Kinder, gentler Republican convention? I think not.
No.
Meanwhile, the three Democrats who hope to unseat Derek Van Orden gathered at UW-Eau Claire last night for their final candidate forum. Civic media was on the scene, and with convention coverage, rather than airing that live and having the forum get lost in the shuffle, it's been recorded, and it will be played back on several civic media stations in and around the 3rd Congressional District. And as soon as we get the details on that playback of that candidate forum, we will pass that along to you. Did you dip your toe into any of the All-Star game last night?
I did not.
I tuned in just to see if William Contreras and Christian Yelich would hopefully have some fireworks. They did not. Both went 0 for 2. But it was still fun to watch Paul Skeens, this rookie pitcher.
Yeah.
He was amazing. And then I did not know about the pitcher from Oakland, whose name is escaping me right now. He too had a pitch of like 103 miles an hour, like the fastest pitch ever measured in an All-Star game. These pitchers are just incredible that they now have here.
Mason Miller.
Yes. My goodness.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And then the final score was 5-3, American League winning. The only National League scoring was a 3-run home run from Shohei Ohtani. No surprise there.
Shocking.
That totally checks out. For the AL, first it was Juan Soto who hit a 2-run double. And then later it was Jarren Duran from the Boston Red Sox who hit a tie-breaking 2-run homer, and that was the difference in the American League's 5-3 victory over the National League yesterday. So we continue in the All-Star break, and the Brewers will be back in action on Saturday in Minnesota to take on the Twins Saturday and Sunday, and then they will be at Wrigley Field on Monday next week for a 3-game series against the Cubs. We'll unpack some more of the news from the Republican convention and our climate check, the Midwest Farm Report, so much more still ahead just this hour on Up North News Radio. Remember, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this Wednesday morning, when you're here, you're up north. Be right back. I see you out there doing your little Charlie Brown dance, your head either going this way and that way, or your chin way over here and then way over here, shuffling your feet. Jazz pianist Vince Guaraldi was born this day in 1928, noted composer of music for the Peanuts series. Born in San Francisco back in 1928. Passed away in 1976 at the age of 47 due to a heart attack, but before he left, gave us an amazing library, a catalog of music from Charles Schultz's cartoon about Charlie Brown and the rest of the Peanuts gang. More in today's history lesson coming up in just a bit. A reminder that there is an election across Wisconsin on August 13th. It's a primary election in many instances, like the 3rd Congressional District Democratic primary we talked about a moment ago. But there is also an important statewide referendum that would amend the Constitution on there and allow Republican legislators to block more federal aid from being distributed as designed to Wisconsin residents. To learn more about the election that's happening on August 13th, where to vote, what all is on the ballot, are you registered, how to get registered, go to myvote.wi.gov. Again, myvote.wi.gov. Special Republican convention coverage all this week from Civic Media. News Director Terry Bell has been there during the 7 p.m. hour for special reports. Todd Allbaugh show has been live from the convention site from noon to 2, and we will talk to one Todd Allbaugh a little bit later on in the program and find out how things have been going there. In terms of what to talk about from the convention, there's no shortage of material. It's just a matter of how do you possibly rank this? I know that Eric Hovde spoke. I feel like maybe we'll get to that later because, again, it was just a brief, hi, I'm Eric Hovde. I'm running for U.S. Senate. There may have been a sound effect of him stepping on a rake. That can be neither confirmed nor denied. But I do want to play some audio from Ron Johnson, not from his convention speech, but from a follow-up interview yesterday where Ron Johnson is as on brand as Ron Johnson gets when asked about the shooting at the Trump rally on Saturday. Give a listen to the very elements that make Ron Johnson the politician he is. We'll identify those elements right after this clip.
Obvious failure on the part of Secret Service. We're hearing, and it's reasonable to assume this because President Biden appointed all these people not to run their agencies for the mission that they've established for, but for DEI, yes, for equity. So
30 by 30, they said.
And it sounds like that's exactly what this director of the Secret Service is all about. Right. So more focused on DEI than actually accomplishing the mission. There's all kinds of rumors swirling in terms of requests made for beefed up security, detailing Secret Service agents, diverted for Dr. Jill Biden as opposed to President Trump. We'll find out what the truth is, but we got those rumors swirling. We need to get to the bottom of that.
So there it is. Did you catch them both? One, of course, is the thinly veiled misogyny and racism of saying that somebody was hired to run the Secret Service just because she's a woman, and that therefore a woman can't run the Secret Service, according to Ron Johnson. But also the other thing that he never fails to do is to rumor monger under the old guise of people are saying. Mm-hmm. Greg, people are asking about whether Joe Biden, eats children's body parts for breakfast. I don't know, but I'm just saying people are saying.
People, I'm reading that they're saying that that liberals huff the heads of babies to sniff their power, and this is just what people are saying. I don't know. I'm not sure. We're looking into it.
Yeah.
There's lots out there, though. There's lots out there.
And that's what he gets away with. And you say, well, Pat, why'd you play the clip then? To make sure you've got the playbook so that when you're hearing Ron Johnson in the future or somebody's talking about something, just always look for that, people are saying, people are asking. It's a dead giveaway every time that he doesn't know. He's simply looking to plant information. We did mention that Nikki Haley is, or spoke rather. I like the headline from the Associated Press. Donald Trump is feted by his former rivals in a show of Republican unity after rally shooting. Because apparently wouldn't that be a good headline to say that the decaying corpses of the campaigns who failed against Donald Trump were forced to parade on stage and pledge undying loyalty to him. So
yeah. Just like his vice presidential pick. What? Sorry. I have a lot of thoughts on J.D. Vance.
Well, let's talk a bit more about J.D. Vance, shall we? There's a very good article written in the Public Notice newsletter by Noah Berlatsky, who gets into this whole notion that, again, the media loves to play up the populism. And Noah writes, so what is it about J.D. Vance that leads the media to frame him as a muscular populist who frightens billionaires? Is Vance fighting to restore the expanded child tax credit, which slashed childhood poverty before it expired? Does he want to repeal so-called right-to-work laws to empower labor? Of course not. Vance's populism is a shallow, cynical branding exercise. Like Trump and other Republicans, his populism is paper thin. He views the working class with contempt and embraces policies that would entrench poverty and gut social mobility. Vance has benefited throughout his career from the gullibility of a mainstream media never tiring in its search for a white working class whisperer. Vance is a venture capitalist. He stopped being anything like working class long ago, and no one should be fooled by his transparent phoniness. In discussing the issues facing working class people, J.D. Vance doesn't dwell on deindustrialization or decades of anti-labor policy, not on the bipartisan assault on the welfare and safety net in the 1990s, not the devastation of the 2008-9 fiscal crisis. He blames the entrenched poverty not on the wealthy and the powerful, but on the poor and the powerless. And I would add parenthetically, God forbid anybody who's struggling have their own cell phone or have a TV of their own, because apparently that is a sign that you're not humble enough and therefore must not really be that destitute. Vance was telling right-wing ghouls and wealthy bosses what they wanted to hear. That if people don't take a crappy job, it's because they lack character, not because owners aren't paying enough. If people are trapped in generational poverty, it's because they're broken and immoral, not because unions and the social safety net have been gutted. All of that by Noah Berlatsky, writing in the Public Notice newsletter. And I'm glad some people are noticing, but again, just from reading the Associated Press headline, you're going to continue to see this fake populism given the benefit of the doubt. And we're just going to be here to keep calling it out.
I've never bought the idea when everyone's like, oh, Trump is a populist. No, he's an elitist.
Yeah.
He's an elitist. He doesn't care about the population. He doesn't care about the people who vote for him. He thinks they're nothing.
Or less.
Or less, yeah.
And maybe we would hear something different if we heard from some other folks in the Republican Party. But we're not hearing from George W. Bush, a two-term president. We're not hearing from Dick Cheney, Sarah Palin, Mitt Romney, Dan Quayle, Paul Ryan, Mike Pence. Just a few of the former and living Republican office holders and presidential or vice presidential nominees who won't be speaking at the convention. And one more, Melania Trump. Where has she been? Anyway, we will have our climate check report with Melissa Baldoff, and then an update, an unfortunate update on our national anthem singer from the Home Run Derby. All coming up. You're Up North. Welcome back. It's time for this week's Climate Check Republican Convention edition with Melissa Baldoff. Melissa, hello. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, doing fine. I'm coming back to a familiar theme, but only because, again, there are these competing narratives around the Republican National Convention, and I'm just going to read two newspaper headlines and then give the same point that I've given several times. First, from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, how the Milwaukee Republican National Convention could open the door to conservative engagement on climate change. And from the New York Times climate change newsletter, Climate and the Republican Convention, here's where the party stands on global warming, energy, and the environment. Well, to read the former is to indicate that there might be some cracks in the opposition to even acknowledging climate change, much less doing something about it. The latter is much less optimistic. And Melissa, we're a couple days into the convention now. Where do you fall in how you're evaluating things with the grand old party?
Well, I mean, I think you don't have to look much further than who Donald Trump chose to be his running mate. And obviously, it's worth noting that he needed to pick a new running mate because his old vice president isn't supporting him.
Oh, yeah, he's not
Um,
available. That's right. Yeah.
right. But when you look at who Donald Trump chose to be his running mate, JD Vance is somebody who is going to be a very, very, very good friend to big oil and someone who, is skeptical of climate change and is somebody who is going to be, a real step backwards and will be, right there with Donald Trump in, putting the interest of fossil fuel companies ahead of what's best for public health and the environment and uh, you know what we can do better. So, I think that kind of starting from the top, that's what we see. And like seeing that headline, reading the story, I would love if conservatives would want to engage on climate change here in Wisconsin, even locally, but in Wisconsin, at the national level, anywhere, because uh, climate change is not going to only impact the areas of the country that believe in it. It's impacting everyone and everywhere. So I would love for Republicans uh, to join in the fight in addressing climate change, but I just don't think that we have seen the action ever really, ever really happen.
Certainly not at the top of the party. And the New York Times notes aptly that in the opening night of the convention, Monday night, the closest thing to a mention of global warming came from Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, a right winger who derided what she called the Green New Scam and said it was destroying small businesses, which, of course, is not even remotely true. But what it tells me, Melissa, is that something we've talked about repeatedly is probably still going to be just talk for a while. And that would be Republicans and conservatives understanding that even if you are a climate skeptic, you cannot deny the benefits, the economic benefits, if not the climate, you can't, the economic benefits, the jobs, especially the rural jobs that would come with embracing a new sector of the economy that's coming, whether they want to acknowledge it or not.
Exactly. That's something that we've talked about so many times, that the benefits and so many of these jobs that are being created around the country and in states like Wisconsin are going to rural communities. They're not just going into larger cities. Where some in the past have said, "Oh, well, they're just going to go into cities where there are Democrats." No, they're going all over the place, and especially into rural communities. And the other factor there too, the other side of the economic piece, is that some of the damages have been very concentrated and pronounced in rural communities who have been hit very hard by some of the worst effects of climate change when it comes to flooding and extreme droughts that are damaging crops and making it harder for farmers and producers to make a living. So, being able to be part of the economic benefit is really important to people in those communities because they've been harmed by the worst effects of climate change in a pretty big way a lot of times.
I'm just looking at the New York Times article, and it's noting that as recently as 2020, J.D. Vance said in a speech at Ohio State University, "We have a climate problem in our society." He praised solar energy, but that many of his public opinions on this and so many other things have now changed. And yet, as we know, there are Republican members of Congress who understand the significance of this. The question becomes, and this is the question I've been asking all week, is the Republican Party going to try to put on a moderate facade at the convention, or are they just going to rip the mask off and say, we are full-blown extremists, this is who we are, drill baby drill, and nothing but drill? And J.D. Vance's record is clear. He's been sponsor of legislation to repeal part of the Inflation Reduction Act, repeal federal tax credits for electric vehicles, even though the article notes his state has seen $12 billion in clean energy investment since the law passed, including for electric vehicle manufacturing. But none of those things supported by Vance have become law. There is just not a lot of optimism here, despite what some are seeing from the grassroots of the party. Melissa, I don't know that we're going to see any significant change between now and November. Maybe after January, when there's a new Congress, a new administration, perhaps, or the same administration. But between now and November, not so much.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Unfortunately, we have seen so many people, Republicans who have voted against the IRA, though, get out there and trumpet the benefits, right? When there's a big project that's shovel ready, or when there are jobs coming into their communities, they're really happy about that, and they conveniently will leave out the fact that they voted against this legislation. But I think that when you see somebody like JD Vance, he has really, I would say, it seems to have radicalized and become very much a true believer, or at least a true believer. Who knows how true his beliefs are, because they've changed quite a bit, and maybe they are as true as they need to be politically expedient for him. I don't know. I don't know him, so I can't say.
Well,
But they seem pretty solid right now, and pretty solidly against what we need to actually happen. To say that climate change is not a threat, to our environment, to public health and safety, and to our economy is an absolutely absurd position to hold.
and yet, chipping away at this, according to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel article, would be groups like Citizens for Responsible Energy Solutions. Heather Reams is the group's president and says, quote, "I think now Republicans recognize that they can be pro-clean energy, recognize the climate is changing, and keep their Republican credentials. Why don't we engage in this in some way and recognize the value of American homegrown energy?" And that really gets to the heart, Melissa, of when we say, why is this like it is? The reason that we keep coming at this, the reason it's, a mystery, if you will, is that Republicans are not against new jobs. They're not against research and development, except in this area, which is so puzzling, because the only real explanation, I mean, you and I both worked in politics long enough, is that the money coming from the fossil fuel industry or the automotive sector, wherever it is, has got to be so good that you would turn your back on something that a growing number of conservatives are saying, hey, we should actually be embracing this.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there are two reasons for why Republicans broadly, especially at the top, would not be embracing this. One, like you said, is the money coming from fossil fuel companies and the other, those other kinds of energy interests. And the other is politics, because they have decided that going along would be some kind of victory for Democrats that they don't want to hand to Democrats. And it could be one of those, it could be both of those. I think that the likely answer is that it is a little bit of both. I think money is the biggest motivating factor there. But it's incredibly disheartening to think that that we could be making all this progress, but for uh, this special interest money, and the idea that there are some Republicans who just can't stomach the idea of Democrats getting a win or even just a perceived win.
When it shouldn't be. It's not a win for Democrats. It's a win for
Right.
the planet.
Energy independence, to reduce our reliance on, foreign energy. They're that the line that you said from the woman with CRES, that's really really an important piece of this, to have that American homegrown energy. And it's just it's really unfortunate that there aren't more Republican leaders who want to stand up and be a part of that.
So here's one more. Carly Matthews, the Vice President of Communications for the American Conservation Action Coalition, said that this doesn't mean conservatives don't care about the environment. She says she sees the pride that conservatives take in caring for the earth and passing it down to future generations. And so in her outreach efforts, she says in the Journal Sentinel, she prefers to, quote, start with conservation or stewardship and then ease into climate change. Those words ring hollow, Melissa, when you get to what we've said before. The current Republican position in Congress is to gut conservation and land stewardship programs. There's just no there to back up these aspirations of the few conservatives that claim to care about the environment.
Exactly. And, I think that's also a little, disingenuous when you're talking to folks in rural communities, who, conservation and stewardship is that's their life. That's what they've been doing. And what they need is some support and some help and some buy-in from leaders in state and federal government to do what they can't do. And they are not unaware of the fact that the climate is changing. And I hear that from folks. I would hear that when I would visit farms with Governor Evers. When we would hear from people, people would say the weather's changing, we got to do things differently. So it is not lost on people in rural communities that the climate is changing, that the weather is changing, and that they have to go about doing things differently. They don't need someone to tell them that they care about conservation and stewardship. They need the federal government and the state government to show them they value those things, and that they are going to be partners in doing what's beyond that to protect our land and water and air for future generations.
My closing note is based on something else Carly Matthews of the American Conservation Action Coalition had to say. She said conservatives have shied away from climate change in the past, in part due to what she called the doom and gloom approach taken by the left. And I'm not saying that's entirely correct, but what I am saying is, if there's one thing we have hit repeatedly in this segment, is that yes, there is a crisis, but there are also opportunities. There's an economic aspect of this that needs to be talked about as well. And we wish all the conservatives luck out there that are trying to keep this point going. Melissa Baldoff, as always, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll talk to you again soon. We should also note that day 3 of the Republican National Convention today, we will be hearing from vice presidential nominee, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. And today is also what I would refer to as Tall Tales Day. It's actually foreign affairs is supposed to be the emphasis. But from the withdrawal from Afghanistan to what's happening in Israel and Gaza and, of course, Ukraine, Tall Tales Day may be the more apt description. Melissa Kay of Locally Grown Radio in Wisconsin Rapids has our history lesson next. You're up north. Hello, Melissa.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
I'm doing well.
Which microphone are you using there?
Well, it did say that it was my Phyllis.
I do hear you. I do hear you tapping it. Tap it again.
Tap. Rooney.
Tapping. Just apparently you need to be up a little closer to it.
Hello.
There it is.
Yeah, you sounded a little distant there. Could just be the way you throw your voice. You know, you might be a trained professional.
Throw it over there.
Throw it away. Okay, here we go. We got this. You got a couple of things to tell us about up there in that neck of the woods?
Hey, I can turn my mic volume up. Ha ha. Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right, here we go. 10 seconds. Boy, if this intro doesn't say it all, then you're listening to Light Rock 105.3 FM with Nicolette Larson and a lot of love. Nicolette Larson was born this day in 1952. A Lot of Love was her big hit, native of Helena, Montana. Passed away in 1997 at the age of 45, but not before giving us a light rock staple, Mr. Bach.
I always thought this was Linda Ronstadt.
Oh, no.
I never knew this because it sounds like Linda Ronstadt.
Yes.
To me, it does.
Yes. Do you know what happens in every era? Well, first off, let's welcome in Melissa Kay from Locally Grown Radio in Wisconsin
Good morning.
Rapids. How you doing? I've noticed that when some singer first kind of really makes it big, like Linda Ronstadt, there's always somebody else will get mistaken for them. And my best example, and this would be from the early 90s, when Mariah Carey was really first starting to become famous. And there's this song called Crush by Jennifer Page. And I always thought that it was Mariah Carey for the longest time. And
okay.
So, I mean, and then more recently, Vanessa Carlton and Michelle Branch. Even they joke now, all these years later, that people still can't tell them apart either. And I keep coming back to it's the fact that local disc jockeys, you don't have as many local disc jockeys anymore who announced every record, basically. We don't do that anymore. Now we're going to play 35 hits in a row. Like, yeah, and you'll learn nothing. It's just a background music service. But if you want real locally grown radio, you go to Melissa Kay. How are things down there? Or up there?
We're working hard at Locally Grown Radio at WFHR. I've been doing a lot of conversations with our local veterans because I'm working on the veteran series for my new show that will debut hopefully this next month.
Nice.
And it's Conversations with Melissa Kay. It will be on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 6.
Oh, okay.
Lovely.
I know. Can't wait for that. Let's see. We've got another birthday today, Spencer Davis. From, I don't know how this coincidence worked out. He was part of the Spencer Davis group, which had this big hit with Stevie Winwood on lead vocals. You're like, wait, if that's Stevie Winwood, why is it the Spencer Davis group? Well, it's his group and he's the guitarist on there. So, born in Wales this day in 1939. Passed away just a couple of years ago at the age of 81. And I suppose I really could have queued this up better to Stevie Winwood's lyrics, but it's a great little jam. So I'm just going to continue talking over it until it's time for Stevie to sing. Oh, here it is now. We mentioned earlier that pianist Vince Guaraldi was born this day in 1928. And the Hoff is 72 years old today. David Hasselhoff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Melissa.
eat a cheeseburger and you're honest.
Melissa, any exposure to Baywatch, the original TV series?
No, not really. Aside of, well, you can't watch that.
Too much slow motion running for Melissa.
That's right.
I'm a Knight Rider guy, so.
There you go. Let's see. Luke Bryan, country singer, is 48 years old today.
I got that real good, feel good stuff up under the seat of my big black jacked up truck.
I get a feeling this is played on some station in Wisconsin Rapids every so often. You play a little Luke Bryan out there?
Oh, I'm sure it's played.
Oh, yeah. You know who else?
It really sound like country to me, though.
No, I've never. It's always like there's a little bit of appropriation going on in the song, if you know what I'm saying. Let's wish a happy 77th birthday to Queen Camilla. Hello! There we go. And one more birthday here. Roy Kent, our one of our favorite characters from Ted Lasso. Actor and comedian Brett Goldstein is 44 years old today. And Greg, you've met him.
I've seen him. I've never met him.
Oh, I'm sorry, seen him. That's right. You went to go see the performance. And I said, Greg, I'm looking for all these audio clips of music. It might take forever to find something clean from Brett Goldstein, but can you help us out? And Greg came through.
Howdy, y'all cowboys. My name is Ted Lasso, and I'm from Kansas. Wow.
Roy, if you die, do you want to be buried or cremated? Like if you were hit by a bus today, what do I do?
Go after the bus driver and make him pay for what he did to me. Avenge me, Keeley. Avenge me!
That's the Roy Kent we know and love. Let's see. Well, if you weren't able to watch Baywatch, I got a feeling you weren't at all watching the movie Endless Love with Brooke Shields back in 1981.
I wasn't born yet.
But you sure know the song by Lionel Richie and Diana Ross, as the movie was released this day in 1981. Oh yeah, here we go.
My love, there's only you.
I can tell this story now because it's nearly 4 decades old. We knew a couple that sang at weddings, and this was one of those songs that would come up during weddings in the 80s, mid to late 80s. And if they were ever in a church with a balcony where they were up and out of eyesight, they did the most dramatic interpretation of it to themselves. They're singing it straight, but they got the arms out and they're just like, I want to share. And they would reenact it for us, and we would just laugh, and like they never got busted, thank God. But please know that about your wedding singers.
Oh, that makes me wish I had. Oh, see, I would have demanded that at my wedding.
I don't want just singing. I want a performance.
I want interpretive dance.
Yes.
Full theatrical piece.
My apologies to Greg. I completely lost my place on my list here. And there is one more birthday. Singer Regina Bell is 60 years old today. Had a few songs in her own right, but might be best known for a duet with Peebo Bryson from the original animated version of Aladdin.
Don't you dare close your eyes.
That's my favorite line. Don't you dare close your eyes. I'm on a flying carpet. I am horrified right now.
This is the one they play over the closing credits, and it's just a lovely rendition. Melissa, anything else happening in beautiful Wisconsin Rapids that we should know about this week?
You know, we're just gearing up for our parking lot party that's happening in August. So we're lots of planning with that. I got to find a food truck.
You have to find a food truck?
Yeah.
Melissa has to find a food truck, everybody, that can be in Wisconsin Rapids when?
August 14th.
August 14th. Listeners, you are on notice. Help Melissa. Help a girl out.
Help me. We want tacos if that's possible, but we're not picky.
Food
truck's a food truck.
You want to give us an email or a phone number, or should they just
Melissa
if you know
Melissa.k@civicmedia.us.
There you go. Yeah, only legitimate inquiries, please. Melissa, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Always good to see you guys.
I can't wait to see how this turns out. Back after this, you're Up North. This is another one you could do a dramatic interpretation of as you're singing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. In the car every time.
Yep. Thank you, ma'am.
See you
Have a
guys.
wonderful day. See ya.
You too.
Okay, bye. Hey, good morning, Joe.
Morning.
Thanks for being here. How are you?
Good. How
All
are you
right.
doing?
Good, thank you. Appreciate you joining us here. We'll
Of
get.
course.
We're in a commercial break here for about another minute and a half. I'm going to introduce the segments. We've got a live update from our meteorologist, and then we're going to jump into our interview. We've got a quick little 1 minute commercial break in the middle of it, but then we wrap up at 7:29, and we'll cut you loose to get your day going.
Great. Thank you.
And you're still a political strategist / senior advisor for the Lincoln Project?
Yes.
Okay. All right. There we go. And just updating my notes. All right. I'm going to tuck you back in the waiting room so that you can make all the noise you want, and I'll come grab you near the end of the weather report.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Hey, Brittany.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good.
Good.
A special musical intro for you today.
Oh, yay.
I'm trying to be climatologically accurate in my musical bumpers.
Love it.
Okay. Be there in a sec.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Back now at 7:06 on this Wednesday morning, July 17th. This is Up North News Radio. Unabashedly Wisconsin, brought to you by Courier Newsroom and carried by our friends on the Civic Media Radio Network. Nice to have you along. Coming up this hour, we're going to be talking in just a couple of minutes to longtime political strategist Joe Trippi, and we'll ask him his perspective on whether the messages coming out of the Republican convention in Milwaukee are going to be landing with moderate voters. In our homeroom segment, we'll be talking to Jennifer Berkshire, author of The War on Education. And Todd Allbaugh will talk to us later in the show about his experience so far doing his noon to 2 o'clock radio show from inside the convention site. From Rob in Tigerton, and Rob, apologies for missing your note yesterday where you talked about listening to Sean Cassidy back in the day. Rob says, good morning from Tigerton, sunny and 56. Should be a very pleasant day for mowing lawns today in Tigerton. Yesterday after mowing, I had my favorite drink. I believe it's a pina colada he's got here. It was great. I hope someday soon to have a pina colada with my favorite morning radio team. That must be Greg Bach and meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Thank you, Rob.
That would be awesome.
That would be.
Yeah. Oh, wait. I think we have special intro music based on the weather for Brittany's weather segment. That was a long way to go just to get cool for the summer, to talk about cooler temperatures. I immediately regret that choice. But Brittany, nice to have you here. And yeah, it is officially comfortably cool.
It really is. I'm so excited for it. The relief, no humidity. You can open those windows up. You can shut that AC off. Temperatures today are only going to be rising to the low 70s into northern Wisconsin. Some mid 70s will be felt down to the south. And that's it. We've got a ton of sunshine on tap, only a few clouds building in later on this afternoon, but nothing is going to be in the way. There is going to be no rain in the forecast. The only thing is a little bit of breezy winds, but those are out of the north, and that's what's pulling in these comfortable temperatures. This is going to hold for tomorrow, too. We'll get warmer towards the weekend, but I am going to soak up every bit of this.
Every bit of it, indeed, because again, if we can get it warmer for the weekend when folks are swimming or not on the water and everything, that's great. But for the work week and not having to run the air conditioner, works out just great. Brittany, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
welcome.
Have a
a good
wonderful day. Yeah. It's our pleasure now to be joined by Joe Trippi, Senior Advisor to the Lincoln Project and longtime political analyst, who's joining us now to talk a bit about the Republican National Convention taking place in Milwaukee. Joe Trippi, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, good to be with you, Pat.
Well, let's jump right into it because there are some questions we've been asking even since long before the convention that I'd love to get your take on, because Donald Trump is who he is. And despite the major media still not seeming to learn that lesson, we're hearing again this week, oh, he's going to be presidential any day now. Oh, this assassination attempt is going to change him and make him kinder and gentler. We know better, which leads to this question. Will the outcome of the convention be that they actually continue to try to put on a more moderate face? Or, as I've been saying it, are they just going to rip the mask off and say, look, we are who we are, and you should come love our brand of extremism?
No, they'll try to appear like they've changed, but it's not going to wash, I don't think. A general reminder that the chants of hang Mike Pence were actual calls to hang Mike Pence. I mean, and I think the pick of J.D. Vance is going to reveal over time just how extreme and still an insurrectionist party the Trump-led MAGA Republican Party is. So I think I don't expect this convention to change much. I think this has been essentially a dead heat. It was a dead heat after the debate performance. It's going to be a dead heat. I think the assassination attempt is not going to. First of all, the first two early polls show that hasn't changed that sort of margin either. And I certainly don't think this so far what I've seen in the convention is going to change that. And I do think there's some clear cracks, I think, in the Republican coalition as well that were caused a lot by J.D. Vance's pick. I mean, I think a lot, and the booing of McConnell when he was just announcing that doing the roll call for Kentucky. There's some signs that I still think, even though Nikki Haley showed up because she wants to preserve whatever future she might have in what she thinks may be a return to sanity in the party, I guess, but that's not going to happen either. And I don't think she's going to bridge the gap that's opened over there. I think those Republicans are still gettable by Biden and Democrats and pro-democracy folks, and as we get closer in November.
I asked at the top of the show, whatever happened to Nikki Haley? Of the many Nikki Haleys, I specifically meant the one who was around from like February until April or so. Nikki Haley is not a sympathetic figure to me, and yet I almost felt a slightest tinge of sadness watching her come out there, knowing what was going on in her head, going, this should have come out completely different, and this is not what this party is. And yet she didn't have, say, the courage of a Liz Cheney or so many others, which leads to the question of whether the Republican Party as we used to know it ever does reemerge, or is this more of a Trump MAGA type party for at least the foreseeable future?
Oh no, it's a miscalculation on her part that somehow. Her, wing or whatever you want to call it, her flavor of the old Republican Party could somehow ever come back in power. I mean, J.D. Vance's selection alone shows that where this party is headed, and that it is the Donald Trump MAGA, it's Trumpism, and she's got no place there. But I think what you're seeing is what's happened throughout since he came down the escalator. Either you're with him or you're purged, and so you see a lot of people. We've seen it consistently who slowly make the move towards Trumpism, towards MAGA, and then become part of it, become enablers of it, and she's now firmly in that camp.
We're talking to Joe Trippi, longtime political strategist who knows a thing or two about economic populism and delivering effective economic messages. And that's what I wanted to ask you about next, because we've talked about J.D. Vance's brand of fake populism, of saying you're standing for the everyday American worker when everything about your record says otherwise. But he has, obviously, from Hillbilly Elegy on down, been able to fool just enough people. So the question I'm sure people ask of you from a strategy standpoint is, how do you counter that? How do you let people know exactly that when J.D. Vance and Donald Trump talk about standing with, the middle class and middle of America, there's nothing in their record that indicates it, but you still have to convey that somehow. What's been your advice?
Well, it looks to me like J.D. Vance was handpicked by the billionaires, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and a bunch of others who Elon's now out there committing $45 million a month to the Trump super PAC. And boy, just sheer coincidence that 2 days later, J.D. Vance, who they were pushing for VP, becomes the nominee. It's clear. It's all about tax cuts for the rich. And by the way, that we'll pay for it with social cuts in Social Security, Medicare, getting rid of regulations. It's exactly the opposite of what J.D. Vance is going to try to sell people, but the record is there, and he's all over the place. I mean, he's only been in the Senate for 2 years. I just think this is a really good pick for those of us who want to defeat Trumpism in November. There's a lot in this record, his record, what he said about women, his position on abortion, on IVF, on just about everything when it comes to women's reproductive freedom and taking those freedoms away. He is going, I think, in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, in particular, the blue wall states, going to be a huge target and a big help to defeating Trumpism in those three states.
I would imagine that in swing states like Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania, elsewhere, it would be too simplistic to say that you can only push either an economic message or a message about saving democracy or a message about social issues such as the Dobbs decision and proposed national abortion bans and things like that. But perhaps I'm wrong. Are there any one of those that you think deserves more emphasis in order to be most effective in a swing state population in the Midwest?
Look, I think all of them. I do think this is going to be a choice election. You have a choice, Wisconsin. You have a choice, America. Do you want national bans on abortion, or do you want to reinstate Roe v. Wade? Do you want billionaires getting tax cuts where their plan is to cut? How do they pay for it? By cutting Medicare and Social Security and Head Start programs. Do you want? Make the choice on economic terms on all of it. And I think. That is why I still believe, with all the hand wringing in the Democratic Party, that we are going to defeat Trump in November. That Trump's not going to be, regardless of whether it's Joe Biden or the party moves to somewhere else. That's the choice. Do you want democracy, or do you want this? To burn it all down like Trump wants to do? This is the choice you have to face. And yes, you may not be happy with the choice we give you. If people aren't happy with that, but you pick, because that's how it's going to go down. And we have to continue to make that case, and we have to continue to say that he's a threat to democracy, because he is, and not back away from it. Because that's somehow inviting violence or something.
This is Joe Trippi, Senior Advisor to the Lincoln Project. We're going to continue this conversation on the other side of this break. This is Up North News Radio, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. All right, Joe, this is a 60-second break, so we'll be back in just a little bit here. In music history, it was on this day in 1975 that Bob Marley and the Wailers played a historic concert at London's Lyceum Theatre, featuring the version of No Woman, No Cry that became a classic. You can catch the rest of our daily history lesson every morning at 6:50, Monday through Friday. Before we continue on with our conversation with Joe Trippi from the Lincoln Project, a reminder that you can sign up for our daily newsletter over at UpNorthNewsWI.com. Click newsletter in the top banner. Today's edition includes a mention of National Hot Dog Day, which you can't have without referencing back to our feature story on the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile that still travels through Wisconsin. We talk about, in light of the MLB draft, about some of the big draft picks from the Milwaukee Brewers who never actually played for the Brewers at the major league level. They went on to other teams through trades and acquisitions. And we've got a link to a recent climate check segment we had here on the radio program about Project 2025 and exactly what it is and its impact on the climate and other areas. We're talking in our next half hour to author Jennifer Berkshire, who wrote The War on Education. That's part of our homeroom segment coming up, but let's continue our conversation now with Joe Trippi, longtime political strategist, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project. And let's pick up right there on Project 2025. Because, Joe, again, the audacity, the no longer needing to hide behind coded language, they just put it right out there. 900 pages saying we dare you to read it. And plenty of people saying, oh, there's so much there. It couldn't possibly all come to fruition. But, Joe, there's enough there, and there's enough material for you folks at the Lincoln Project and others to work with. And you certainly have been working at it to get the word out to the public. What all is in today's MAGA manifesto?
Look, that thing's amazing. And what's clear about it, it's so devastatingly bad that we know for a fact that they, and Rick Wilson talks about this a lot at the Lincoln Project. We know for a fact that they pulled that the stuff in there, and even it was so deadly to Trump and Trumpism in terms of like what they said, the quiet part out loud, that's what caused them to have Trump go out and say, I don't know anything about Project 2025. It's, all from everything in there about women's reproductive rights to what they want to do on immigration across the board. It is 80% of Americans, when you test any of this stuff, say no way in hell. Which, by the way, I think that fact, the more people Google Project 2025, read the thing yourself. Don't take my word for it or anybody's word for it, or it's particularly not their word for it. Just read it, and you will be with the 80% that say no way. The other thing that happened, I think, was when the Supreme Court granted the president, pretty much, total immunity or near it. When they made that ruling, one of the things that spiked, and no one's paying attention to it because of everything else that's happened, is that now 53% of Americans and 53% of independents respond to this question. Donald Trump is a grave threat to democracy and must not return to the Oval Office. 53% of Americans say yes to that. They agree with that statement. So you put that statement, the immunity that the court's given him, and Project 2025 and J.D. Vance riding shotgun with him, and you have the exact way that the American people get to that 53 number against him, at least, I think. And that's why I think that, is there problems? Do people have concerns about Joe Biden, whether it's economic, age, whatever? I mean, I understand that. But that's why, yes, he can win. The same is true if the party decides, or Joe Biden decides, to pass the torch. This is a choice election. You can be with the 53% who believe Donald Trump's a grave threat, who look at Project 2025, which is 80% against it when they hear the details. Those are devastating numbers, and J.D. Vance locks that in for him. It wasn't something to move away from it. So, Pat, I really do believe that you're hitting on some of the real points that need to be made as we move forward into November 2024.
And so when people say, well, how can Donald Trump win after hearing all that, you simply look back at 2016, and not just people who voted, but how many people stayed home for various reasons. And how do you motivate them not to get despondent and throw up their hands and just stay home this time around? And I look at this list of former and living Republican office holders, presidential and vice presidential nominees who will not speak at the convention this year. Paul Ryan, Mike Pence, Dan Quayle, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Sarah Palin, Mitt Romney. And I ask you this, Joe Trippi. So many of them have just decided to go to ground and accept that this is what their old party is. Is that where it's going to stay? Or might we expect, we always talk about the October surprise, in presidential elections. Might we expect, if not necessarily people on this list, but a few more name brand Republicans saying, guys, you know what? We can't do this. We can't let this happen to our country. Or is that too much to hope for?
Well, let's hope for it, but it may be too much to hope for. There hasn't been a whole lot of courage at all. And again, part of it is you're purged forever. You're purged for life in a party that you believed in for your whole life. And so but I do think that there will be, I just think as this crystallizes to be the choice that I think the Biden people wanted to start making that choice clear in the debate, which went horribly wrong and was probably a bad strategic decision in any case, whether the president performed or not, to debate a liar. But the point is, I think that contrast past their Republican convention, because I think they're going to make that contrast even more clear through doing things like picking J.D. Vance, et cetera, that as that crystallizes, I do think you'll see more voices across from independents, Democrats, and Republicans saying, no, this is about democracy. It's about your personal freedom. It's about, do you want NATO to exist or not? Do you want Putin to invade Ukraine and take it all or not? Do you want democracy or or dictator wannabe? Do you want women's reproductive freedom be decided by the woman and medical professionals, or do you want government in there and government deciding that you can't do IVF, that you can't do it, the contraception is going to be banned, which is all part of Project 2025, by the way. One of the things when you ask about motivation, that thing, 900 pages, has something that should freak out anybody. In other words, you can go to the people of color with, this is what he wants to do. You can go to women. This is what he wants to do. You can go to the business community, small business community, and this is what he wants to do. And I think, and anybody who's thinking about sitting on the couch, knowing this is what's going to happen to me, is going to get off the couch.
And it's a message that will continue coming from Joe Trippi and the folks at the Lincoln Project. Joe, this was a real thrill. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Anytime,
all right.
Pat.
Back with our homeroom segment next. You're up north. There we go. We are clear. All right. Cool. Hey, Joe, thank you so much.
Sure. No problem.
This was awesome. Have a great day.
Take care.
All right. Bye now.
Back.
There's Heather.
Morning, Pat. How you doing?
Oh, good. Let's see.
Did you have a nice birthday? I haven't seen you since then.
Yes. It was such a great get together. Nice to see so many folks. I might have a reputation, as I counted at least 12 different bottles of brown fluid that are now on my bar. So apparently people know my size and color. There's a lot of bourbon back there now.
I'll make a note.
It's going to take a while to drink that down. So yeah, looking forward to talking to Jennifer here. Now, have you and Jennifer met before?
We have.
Okay.
We go way back. And in fact, she toured Wisconsin, and was doing some research for a different project at the time that the Blue Ribbon Commission hearings were going on around the state. And she and I kind of road tripped together in the far north, and she saw with her own eyes some of the goings on around the state and the way people were showing up at those hearings. It was pretty fun. Hey, Jennifer, morning.
Hi there.
Jennifer, nice to have you here.
And I have deep Wisconsin roots. My mother was the very first librarian in a little rural community outside of Madison.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. So we're in good shape here to go. This is like our longer break. So we've got 3 minutes yet till we come back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go fill my coffee cup. I'm going to tuck you guys back here behind this little screen. I'm going to leave your mics on in case you guys want to talk to each other. Just keep in mind that even though we're in a radio commercial break, but anybody listening on Facebook or YouTube can still see and hear us. So mind your P's and Q's, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up.
You bet.
All right. Hey to everybody who's listening in. We're looking forward to talking to you all about our show and our upcoming summer summit.
So Heather, what's new?
Oh, we've just been busy getting ready for our big event this week this month, and planning for the fall election and beyond. We've really got our sights on the next budget, and are just trying to do everything we can to build a strong coalition to make sure we get a better budget this time than we did last time.
That's great.
Hopefully we will, if we can elect some new folks to represent us.
Are there any races you're particularly excited about?
Well, our new legislative maps really give us an opportunity to change up the state legislature. And there are a ton of people who are either not running or have been slightly redistricted, which means there's a lot of new faces and voices. And there are a number of amazing public school champions who stepped up to run at the state level. And my hope is that voters are paying attention to that and we'll make sure they get through.
That's so good to hear, because I talk to so many people who are in states where the sheer level of riggedness just, at a certain point, they stop believing that they can do anything.
Yeah. And as you know, that's the feeling that many folks have felt like they've been up against for so long.
Yeah.
Here. And I do think that there are a lot of people working hard to make sure that we don't lose this new maps moment and in really, rebuilding however we can.
I like that. I'm going to use that new maps moment.
Yeah. And miracles don't happen in one election. It takes a lot of work, but
Without
That's where we are. Oh, hey, Pat, welcome back.
Right. Yeah, hey, thanks. No problem. We're going to get going in 20 seconds here. Just a reminder on this third day of the Republican National Convention that special coverage across the Civic Media Radio Network continues at 7 o'clock this evening with News Director Terry Bell. And, of course, Todd Allbaugh has his 12 to 2 show afternoons live from the convention site, and he will be joining us here in about 15 minutes. But first, we have this week's homeroom segment where we talk about the value of and the threats to public education. And, boy, we've got... We brought out the big guns today. We've got Heather Dubois-Born on from the Wisconsin Public Education Network and the author of The War on Education, Jennifer Berkshire. Heather, Jennifer, nice to have you both here.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. So, Jennifer, apparently you and Heather go way back, and you said you've got some Wisconsin connections to education as well.
That's correct. I've got a train going by, and I'm just gonna close my window.
Oh, that's okay.
So, yes, my family actually comes from Ashland, way back, and that's one of the places where Heather and I got to go and visit, all the way on the shores of the lake. And what was amazing about traveling through Wisconsin was that it really didn't matter who we talked to. People's concerns about the state of their schools and what they would like their schools to look like and do for their kids was remarkably similar. And so I came away from that trip feeling really inspired.
The book is called The Education Wars. I misspoke earlier. The Education Wars, A Citizen's Guide and Defense Manual, which Heather is holding up now for folks watching on social media. I was going to say, Jennifer, describe the book, but Heather, as our biggest advocate for public education here in the state, and since you know Jennifer, how about you describe what Jennifer does and what her writings are about, and then we'll let Jennifer rebut.
Or bask in the praise.
That would work too, sure.
Yeah, this is a fantastic manual for people who are wondering what are some of the threats that people are facing to their public schools around the country, and more importantly, what are people doing about it to fight back and what's working. And so I have just delighted in Jennifer's dogged pursuit of this information. For those of you who don't already follow her podcast, Have You Heard? She frequently discusses these topics in great detail and length and gives us an insight into, what people are doing around the country to fight back. And this book really digs deep into what's working there, and it covers Wisconsin too. So I highly recommend that you pick one up. And if you don't already have a copy, you can grab one at our summer summit, where she's going to be talking about this book and lots of other things.
And that's really what prompted this is, Jennifer, you're coming to the Public Education Network Summer Summit later this month. And so when Heather talks about how dogged you have to be, I mean, we've built this whole weekly segment around it, because if you're not dogged about defending public education, I mean, you seem to know more than anybody, you're losing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's really a key observation, is that it's, we take it for granted, right? That our public schools will always be there. And what people in a number of states are starting to realize is that the institution is actually way more vulnerable than we thought, and that defending it requires, it can't just fall on teachers or even just the parents of kids who attend the local public school, that we need to be much better about putting together a coalition of people who understand why public schools are important, both as far as the future of kids, but also for our democracy.
Well, it comes back to that whole notion of the public good, and how so much of anything that's prefaced by public has been under attack. Public schools, public transportation, public parks, public health, you name it. And so the point that I think you're making so well here is, even if you sense there's a threat to public education, you can't just leave it to the public educators to do the work. We need everybody in the public to understand it's good. But I suppose, Jennifer, at times you feel like you still have to start at square one and explain why a public education is a public good.
That's right, because we really, all that language about individual choice in markets, that's the air that we breathe. And think about the way that we conceive of higher education. For anyone listening who's, got kids in college or is still paying off having sent kids to college, we think of that as basically an individual good. You put into it, what you want to, you shoulder that debt as your individual responsibility. And I don't think anybody would look at higher ed and think, oh, what a great model. Let's treat K-12 the same way. But that's precisely the direction that we're moving in.
Heather, you wanted to make a point or two about Jennifer, did I? Oh, yeah, there you are. Okay. I wanted to make sure if you had any questions for Jennifer that you wanted to ask as well, that you could.
Well, I guess I'm curious as to how you seem to stay so positive in the face of the enormity of these challenges, and what is really giving you hope as you learn about all of the ways that people are fighting back, because not all of them seem to be entirely successful from where we're sitting, and we certainly feel like we're up against a pretty big mountain here.
That's so true. I was just talking about that yesterday with my husband, who really delights in hearing me talk nonstop about public education all the time. So, I was saying that, on the one hand, when you think about how tense and frankly demoralizing things are at a national level right now, and you guys know it better than anybody because you've got this crazy convention playing out right in your backyard. But then, I'll spend my days talking to folks who are organizing on the ground. For example, today is the deadline for folks in Nebraska who are gathering signatures to put a voucher initiative on the ballot there. And there has been an unbelievable amount of pressure from policy elites and big money donors not to let Nebraskans vote on this question. And so as a result, you see all kinds of people who probably don't have strong opinions about school vouchers or whether taxpayers should fund religious education, but they really don't like the idea that somebody's trying to keep them from having a voice. And so I look at something like that and I'm like, wow, there's something interesting happening there. And that's, not just related to the future of schools, but also to, how do we get the country back on track? How do we move in a less extreme direction?
Jennifer Berkshire is our guest on our homeroom segment this week, author of The Education Wars, something that she co-authored along with education scholar Jack Schneider. Now, we can talk, Jennifer, about policy all day long and the complexities of getting a referendum passed or legislation passed. But you know as well as any of us that a big part of the key to success from the political right has been in branding, in very simple branding. So I'm just going to throw two of them at you, well, maybe three of them. And you just talk about how those are essentially empty slogans that cover up so much more. There's parents' rights, there's school choice, and there's religious freedom. Now, in just those 6 words, conservatives have been able to gain so much ground that undermines a public education. Talk about the challenge of taking on any 1, 2, or 3 of those basic marketing titles.
The conservative bumper sticker. I thought for sure you were going to say something about funding students, not systems.
No, that too.
Which, I always joke is the equivalent of saying, fund commuters, not roads. So, I've been thinking about this a lot because I really think that a big part of our challenge as believers in public education is that we're stuck defending something that is now very complex. Think about how much time we've spent just trying to unpack the various acronyms that are at the heart of so much of what schools do right now, something like social and emotional learning. And, Heather is great about this because I think she understands that often the parent who is really angry and in your face is mad because they feel like there's something they don't understand. And so as a result, the more complex our world gets and the harder it is for us to explain it, when we open ourselves up to these sort of easy bumper stickers, religious freedom, right? The there's no downside to that, or parents' rights. But it's also, we're alienating a large part of the public who feels like they don't understand what schools do anymore.
Heather, I'm sure you feel the same way about the chore of taking on bumper sticker slogans, because there's so much more to it.
Yes, and it is important to understand the motivation and the meaning behind some of this messaging. But the more important thing, to Jennifer's point, is to get to the heart of why people are showing up in the first place and connect with each other in ways that really center what kids need and the reasons that our public schools bring us together in the first place, because we want to live in thriving communities. We want our kids to be able to have a joyful, happy education in our public schools. And we want to be part of eliminating any barriers to that. And so that's why I'm super excited to jump into all of these questions deeper at our annual summer summit, which, as you know, Pat, is going to be July 30 to 31st in Madison. The first day, we're going to have an organizing workshop, and we're going to talk about all of the ways that we can come together through the fall election to really center public education advocacy in a nonpartisan way and make sure that we know where all of the candidates stand on these issues. And then after the election, we're going to hold whomever gets elected accountable for delivering a better budget next year so that we can start to make a difference for kids and close some of the gaps that we're seeing and fight back against, rhetoric that's getting in the way of doing what's right for kids. And we're excited to do all of this and really grateful that Jennifer's bringing her own self to the conversation so that we can learn from things people are doing in other states too.
To learn more about the Summer Summit, as I say often, it would be a very long website to say Wisconsin Public Education Network. And so they were smart enough to shorten it to Wisconsin Network. So go to wisconsonnetwork.org or go to wisconsonnetwork.org/summit to learn more about the Summer Summit. Jennifer, I'd like your impression on, and you don't have to say this just to be nice to Heather, but do you see an increase in more forceful advocacy for public education, or is Wisconsin an outlier and there are still too many other states where there aren't nearly the public education advocates that there should be?
Wisconsin is definitely leading the way, but in many ways, that's just a reflection of the fact that your public schools have been under attack for so long. I've learned so much from Heather, and I would say that one of the things that I find really inspiring about what's happening in Wisconsin is that you're starting to see rural communities join forces with suburban and urban counterparts as they start to feel the effects of school privatization. And think about how significant the rural-urban divide has been in Wisconsin. You introduced that to many of us in the wake of the 2016 election. We all ran out and got copies of Kramer's book about rural resentment. Well, what if it turns out that we're able to help repair some of that rift through public education advocacy? So I look at something like the work that Heather is doing as a real inspiration, and I talk about it every chance I get.
Heather, I'm sure will now give a version of right back at you, Heather.
Yeah, we are seeing people come together across rural, urban, and suburban communities all over the country because what impacts our school systems in one community impacts everybody. And I think people who really understand what equity looks like when every single kid in every single public school has the resources they need to succeed and thrive, we can start to unravel all of the ways that our own system isn't equitably meeting the needs of all learners, and we can fight back against that. And so it took a while in Wisconsin for some rural communities to see, for example, the impacts of school privatization and the ways that tightens the belt even harder on districts that are already kind of doubly damaged by a school finance system that doesn't put kids' needs first, but rather is focused on property values, which is highly problematic, but then is also siphoning money and resources away from kids who need it most. We got to do something about that. And that's why we come together.
So head to wisconsonnetwork.org to learn more about the Summer Summit, and also look up Jennifer Berkshire's book, The Education Wars. Jennifer, so nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Safe trip up to Wisconsin. Have a wonderful time when you're here.
Thanks so much. It was a real pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Heather. We'll talk to you again real soon. And coming up next, we'll talk to Todd Allbaugh of the conveniently named Todd Allbaugh Show next. You're Up North. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great day.
She was amazing. Thanks so much.
Yeah, she's great. We're looking forward to seeing her in town. Hey, Todd.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good. And thanks, by the way, for sending busted pencils down to the summit. We're excited to see Tim, too.
Well, I hope it works out. I just, on Wednesday, I couldn't be there. I had other plans I couldn't get out of.
Well, we'll miss you, but we're excited that they can join.
That'll be perfect.
Thanks.
That's a great addition. All right. Thanks, Heather. Oh no, somebody's gotten allergic after a couple of days of covering the convention. His immune system's breaking down. Hanging out with all those super spreaders.
Oh God.
Here we go.
That's my fear.
It was on this day in 1968 that the fourth Beatles film Yellow Submarine debuted, ending with this song, All Together Now. From Lauren on Facebook, just borrowed a copy of The Education Wars from the library this week. Looking forward to reading it. And Chris Hambuck-Boyle, of course, thanks Jennifer and Heather for being part of the show. And again, notes that you can learn more at wisconsonnetwork.org/summit. And one of the big boosters of the Wisconsin Public Education Network is one Todd Allbaugh, who joins us in the midst of a week of covering the Republican National Convention from the convention. Mr. Allbaugh, how's it going so far?
Mr. Kreitlow, Mr. Bach, I'm surviving.
Wait, we got survival. We got survival music.
Oh, fantastic.
You are, and we all are having a better week than the unfortunate case of the woman who was singing the national anthem at the Home Run Derby night before last. Greg, I didn't put her statement in front of me, but essentially she said, "I'm not going to kid you. I was drunk and I'm heading to rehab."
Yep.
So as much as we all, there's so many bad renditions of the national anthem, we just lumped her into it, and only come to realize that now she's realizing she may have a problem, and hopes she gets the help that she needs.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope she does as well. Go ahead.
I saw somebody make a comment that he said is a country star, and he said, "I've turned down every offer to sing the national anthem because it's high risk, no reward. If you do well, it's fine, whatever. If you do poorly, you are the butt of the joke." I'm like, I understand that too. Like, I would never do that.
And I've heard a couple of renditions, a couple of good ones, but I don't remember them. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was a big reward unless your name is Marvin Gaye. There's really, I mean, or Whitney Houston. Two people who completely reimagined the national anthem, but to do it as is can be somewhat painful, but I'm sure Todd has heard that at the convention. You've heard that. You've heard God Bless the USA as Donald Trump came out on stage with what appeared to be a hotel pillow attached to the side of his head. A bandage, which, by the way, wasn't there the day after the shooting, but magically showed up when he was at the convention site. Are other people wearing ear pillows in sympathy to the former president out there?
I think I saw one.
Okay.
And there was a great meme of a guy that just had like a sanitary napkin attached to his ear, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed that.
I just figured for all the people that showed up when Trump was in court, they showed up in New York, all in these same suits, the blue suit with the long red tie, and I fully expect the ear bandage is going to become a similar symbol before this campaign is all said and done.
Yeah, they interviewed one sitting Republican congressman. The name escapes me, but he had that an ear bandage on his ear in homage and unity with Trump. So it's been that kind of convention.
Yeah. What's your impression so far? I mean, look, you're filled with a whole lot of Trump supporters, and they're all very upbeat given the way the campaign cycle has gone at this point, when there's still so much time left. But, nary a bad thing to say about what's happening inside the convention so far.
I would say a couple of things. I think you nailed it, Pat, that Republicans here at the convention are absolutely lockstep unified. I mean, you had the parade of, I guess I was wrong candidates, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis and Ted Cruz and all the rest. On our show, we like to play the thing from Hamilton, you'll be back, wait and see. And they just keep coming back, and they just keep coming back to Trump. And so you have that, but here's the thing: they are absolutely unified. Again, you've completely condemned violence in politics. That's a given. But the incident over the weekend has done nothing but absolutely fire these delegates up. And I think the real question, or one of the real questions going into November is, and certainly next month in Chicago, are Democrats going to be able to match that energy, that unity, get behind Joe Biden and say we're going to let differences within our party, within our caucuses go aside and really get behind Joe Biden because the stakes are so high?
I'd like to answer that question. No. No, because that's not what Democratic conventions are usually about. It's somebody or a group.
Well, if that's the case, then Democrats are in real trouble. The nation's in real trouble. That's the bottom line.
I got a point on that. I'm going to say again, no, because this convention is a blip in the process. The Democratic convention is a blip in the process. The debate was a blip in the process. And in an election that is still 50-50, or what the latest poll was like 46-46, whatever it is. I mean, this is, what do I always liken it to? The Olympic sport of speed skating. The long ones were like for the first 7 laps around the oval, they're going super slow. And then that last lap, they are skating like a tiger is chasing them. And that's kind of what this campaign is. And I'm not discounting all of these things that happen, but there's so many people ready to jump on, board right now and say, this thing is over, when every poll indicates, folks, you better pay attention every day between now and then, because you just never know what's going to happen next.
I'm not saying it's over. I agree with you, Pat. There's a long time, but I do think that, these people, as you well know, in the Democratic Party, I've seen the Republican Party, the delegates, the people that go, they're the people that lead the charge to register people, to get out the vote, all those kinds of things. And at least on the Republican side, from what I'm seeing, they're ready to go. Tony Zimmerman on Facebook asks, do you agree with Rick Wilson that Ron Johnson is the cheese curd Ted Cruz? Ron Johnson is just a goof. He gave a very divisive, hateful speech, transphobic speech on the floor to hear, and then threw his staff under the bus and said, well, my staff loaded the wrong speech on the teleprompter. Give me a break.
But now at first I doubted that there was even a kinder, gentler speech version out there, but then they posted a picture of it to Twitter. It had all the transphobic stuff still in it. So no, it wasn't a kinder, gentler speech. That's not how Ron Johnson works. And then went on, we played the soundbite earlier of Ron Johnson giving an interview where he said, the Secret Service failed because of a DEI hire at the top. So Ron Johnson can't speak without some thinly veiled misogyny or racism coming out, rumor mongering. These are the things he does. So everything's been on brand so far.
I would also say, I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of the network coverage. We've been really busy at Panther Arena next to Fiserv. A lot of great press people here, by the way. Enjoying talking about some of my colleagues. But this all seems very quote unquote normal. And I haven't seen a lot of press talking about this is a unique, unprecedented convention because we've never had in American history, modern American history, a 34-time convicted felon. Last night was supposed to be about keeping America safe again, and they started off endorsing a felon, a criminal. I mean, why we're not talking about that more, I don't know.
I like how Todd just slips in. I was talking to my colleagues, Lester Holt and David Muir and Nora O'Donnell and, Todd Allbaugh, right there. His colleagues.
If only.
More from him coming up at noon today. Todd, thank you so much. Thanks to the rest of you for being here. We'll catch you tomorrow morning.